Good evening. I'm Christine Ross, Chair of the Voter Services and Engagement Committee of the League of Women Voters Salem. We welcome you all to the forum. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. This forum is for Ward 6 City Councilor candidates. We'd like to thank the Salem Public Schools and the principal of Bates Elementary School for supporting civic engagement in Salem by allowing us to use this space for the forum. We'd also like to thank our good partners, Salem Access Television, for their professional services videotaping this forum so it can be viewed later by those who could not attend in person. Finally, I'd like to thank Ward 6 residents for their help organizing the forum and for providing good suggestions for questions and issues to ask about in this forum tonight. So our forum moderator this evening is Dustin Luca. Dustin is a North Shore native and a spokesperson for Salem State University, where he works in the university's Marketing and Communications Division. Previous to this role, Dustin was also a journalist for 20 years, which included 10 years covering the city of Salem for the Salem News from 2014 to 2024. Dustin is also the person behind the Spreadsheet, a Salem election night tradition where he reports election results to the city through an online document that's populated as the results come in. So I'll turn it over now to Dustin to begin the forum.
Thank you. Welcome everybody to the Ward 6 City Councilor Candidates Forum. I can read. There are 3 candidates running for 1 ward councilor seat tonight, so residents of this ward will vote in a preliminary election on September 16th to narrow the race down to 2 candidates. The Ward 6 City Council candidates in alphabetical order are Robert K. Meyer, Caitlin Halapa, and Marlene Warner. We ask members of the audience to silence your cell phones. Please also be quiet during the forum so that everyone can hear the candidates. This means no cheers or jeers, please. Please also hold your applause until the end of the forum. I'll start by presenting the format and the rules of the forum, and then we'll have the candidates' opening statements. First, the questions were obtained from members of the public. The forum organizers collected the questions and edited them for length and clarity. In the League of Women Voters of Salem co-sponsored forums, the candidates are also given questions and the opportunity to answer about their approach or ideas. They will not engage with one another, and they will not debate one another. There will be a 90-second opening statement from each candidate this evening. Then I will ask prepared questions. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond, and there will then be 90-second closing statements. With that, we will now go into the introductory statements. So each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. Statements will go in the order that the candidates will appear on the preliminary election ballot. So we will be starting with Marlene and then going to Bob and Caitlin. So we will start with the candidates' introductory statements. Please address why you are running for the councilor seat and the skills you can bring to the position. And we will start with Marlene.
You can all hear that. Perfect. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. I just want to extend my thanks to Christine and the League of Women Voters, and thank you for arranging this, Dustin for moderating it, and Meg Stott, who I know was really essential to making sure this happened this evening, so thank you for that. To all the folks who are running with me, I think it's a huge decision to just make the choice to be up here tonight. So I just, congratulations to you for getting this far, because I know how hard it is. And all the people who have joined us tonight here, the folks who will watch later. And then most importantly, I just want to say thank you to my family. My husband, John, and my daughter, Bridget, are here, and my sons are at home. These two are vying for who's the better campaign manager. You can make a decision later and let them know. But I want to be your next ward counselor because I believe that the wonderful people of North Salem deserve to have another strong and experienced leader to follow in Meg's footsteps. After 23 years of rolling up my sleeves to help where it's needed, and my role as a mom and a CEO of a nonprofit, statewide nonprofit, I think that I am perfectly suited to do this, and all of the work that comes with being a city councilor is really in my wheelhouse. I absolutely love Salem. No job is too big or too small. So whether we're talking about fixing the sidewalks, educating on bike lanes, improving neighborhood relations, tackling addiction, mental health, housing and food insecurities, or really preserving our 400 years of history, I would appreciate your vote. Thank you. I don't know who goes next.
to be doing this a lot.
Hi, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and Dustin for, all the folks, a lot of familiar faces. My name is Bob Kiermaier. I've grown up in Salem, lifelong resident. I was a basketball coach for 30 years with youth basketball, starting with the Cartoon League. I've run for office before only because people weren't running, and I grew up on Bridge Street. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. My father was a house painter, and my mother worked assembling vacuum cleaners down at the Smith Corona, down at the Wood, Shetland. I'm running because I'm retired, and I think I have a lot to offer, and that seems to be coming true with me walking and meeting people. I've canvassed the whole ward. I passed out 1,300 palm cards. I was gonna do just the people that voted in the last 2 elections, and I said I'm walking the streets anyway, so. And I've met a variety of people, and I've actually forgotten some names, so when they opened the door, I kind of grew up with the people. So I think my experiences in Salem and the changes that have happened over the last 30 years.
It's time, Bob.
Okay.
Caitlin?
Hi everyone, good evening, and thank you so much for coming out tonight. My name is Caitlin Halapa, and I really appreciate your interest in our democratic process here and joining us. I do want to thank the League of Women Voters, and also the residents and Salem Access TV for putting this all together really, really quickly. I'm glad that we're able to have this opportunity before the preliminary election on the 16th. I am super impressed and very grateful. My goal tonight is pretty simple. In the next hour, I want you to understand more about who I am, how I plan to serve our community, and what specific ideas I have to guide Salem towards a more sustainable, equitable, affordable, and collaborative future. The next council will preside over work that is particularly challenging. We're looking at a triple threat, where a community that is losing its ability to afford its homes needs to build expensive, climate-resilient infrastructure to protect our homes, and a hostile fiscal environment manufactured by the Trump administration. Calling it challenging seems like an understatement. In this environment especially, our ward deserves a representative who is transparent, who leads with empathy, who will work with you, and treat the critical issues facing our city with the urgency they deserve. I look forward to proving to you all tonight that I am that candidate, and I hope that in the future many of us will work together to build a brighter and brighter Salem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are now going to move into the questions. Responses are going to go in alphabetical order and then move right. So we are going to be beginning this time with Bob. And then each candidate responds first to the different questions. So we're going to be shifting it to the right with each question. So question number 1, this one starts with Bob. What are your thoughts on expanding the residential parking permit program in Ward 6 and having more streets restricted to resident-only parking?
I've been talking to a lot of people. As I'm walking the ward, a lot of people have lost their parking on the main drag on North Street. So the people are filling into the side streets, and it's becoming I was talking to a lady that lives on Dearborn, and she's in her 60s, and if she doesn't get home by 6 o'clock, she has 1 parking spot at her house, and she has 3 cars. She has to literally park like 5 blocks away. And I was talking to a fireman, and they used to park their cars on North Street and keep them out of the neighborhood for their 24-hour shift. So the parking issue, even if you gave out the stickers, there's not enough parking. So that's gonna have to be something that can be worked out. I do like the resident parking, but Ward 6 is away from the downtown, so there won't be many tourists,
Caitlin,
Right. Great, thank you. Yeah, I've heard from a few residents that are interested in having this extended a bit. If you actually look at the areas in Salem where the resident parking is permitted, there's actually areas in Ward 6 that are closer to the downtown than other areas in Salem that do have residential parking. So I've heard from people that live on Buffum Street in particular, as well as Balcom, and that would be interested in this. And I think that is something that if the residents are asking for, it's something that the city should really examine and have a discussion with the residents about it. It is a double-edged sword in some ways. It does assure that tourists aren't parking in your spot, but it can be somewhat problematic if you're trying to have guests over or if you're trying to have family come and visit, and it makes that process a little bit more complicated. So I just want to make sure that when the city is discussing these sort of things with residents, we're just able to make informed decisions together.
I mean, I don't think I have a ton more to add other than the fact that I haven't heard this issue come up. Instead, what I've heard more of is that people are concerned about where they're supposed to put their cars in terms of a lack of parking on North Street, and then also during snow emergencies, that a lot of folks are not sure what to do. They don't have access in their own streets or on their own properties. And it's true, Bates doesn't have a ton of parking. We don't have a lot of places where people can place their cars, so I would love to see us shift that over. I once owned a condo on Northey Street, and there were spots for us there. I rented an apartment on Essex Street. We had spots there, but there aren't that many spots available in Ward 6, so I would love for us to think a little bit more strategically about this before we make any rash decisions. And then similarly, I think to what Caitlin said, we really need to find out what the residents want, if this is overwhelming or if we've heard it just from a few households. So it would be something I'd be willing to investigate, but I think we need to look at some of the additional parking issues before we just hone in on that.
Thank you very much. Question number 2 is going to begin with Caitlin. What steps can the city take to address pedestrian, bike, and vehicle safety? Are there specific intersections in the ward that you would like to see improvements in?
Sure. So that's a great question. The city has created this Safe Streets for All action plan. So there's actually data about what intersections are the most dangerous. They have it broken out in terms of highest frequency, highest impact, as well as bicycle and pedestrian specifically. So some of those probably don't surprise people. Actually, one over in my neck of the woods between Bridge and Boston Street's one of the worst offenders in the city. I think the city started to improve safety beyond just the studies, but actually implementing some changes. So the North Street bike lanes is probably the most relevant example to a lot of folks. Speaking with people in the ward and from my own experience biking most places, they definitely need some improvements. There's really no secret about that. I think that some of the issues with parking could be addressed with reconfiguring this. The good news is that it's paint and post, so it's fairly easy to change it. The state is doing a Route 114 study, so they're studying the entire corridor throughout the city, including North Street, and I'm hoping we can use that as an opportunity to change some things. What I would like to see specifically is on North Street combining both of the bike lanes onto one side to make more of a multi-use path. This one over my neck in the woods along North Street is actually where I sort of taught my partner how to bike. It's nicer if you're not as familiar with biking, if you need some practice. It's also a great way to make sure emergency vehicles can actually get through traffic.
Marlene's next.
So I guess I would say that the bike lanes, I've been a little surprised as I've walked around and door knocked that most people are very much in supportive of them. I was a little worried that I would hear something opposite of that, but most people say they're great and they would love to see them continued, but they would like to see a different configuration. So I think the 114 survey is a great opportunity if you haven't gotten a chance to give your feedback to go ahead and do that. I would also say that we need to tell people, which sounds a little ridiculous, but tell people how to drive around a bike lane. I think that I know myself, and maybe there were more, but in July alone, I know 2 people were hit in a bike lane, and that's because I think it's very difficult, as somebody who does more driving than biking, hauling children around Salem, it's sometimes hard to figure out where you're supposed to be. Head of the crosswalk, behind the crosswalk, who's yielding to who, what space do you move into. Lots of people have said to me as I've been door knocking that they're just not sure what to do and how to handle that. And then I guess the other thing I would say is that the three major intersections I've heard a lot of problems about are Liberty Hill and Appleton. The Morgensterns have had their house hit twice. Tremont and School and Grove, and I know there's some plans for that already, but I think neighbors really want to see some changes made there. And then Harmony Grove and Mason is another place that it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Nobody knows who's going when and how. Thanks.
I'm glad they brought that up about North Street. I didn't want to be the elephant in the room. I'm hearing from people, especially businesses on North Street, people are heading, part of it was supposed to be traffic calming, from what I understood, and I haven't been able to get over 15, 20 miles an hour in like 10 years on North Street. So my thoughts are one lane. And that would bring back the parking for the residents. It would allow emergency vehicles to get by. I talked to a gentleman that lived on Dearborn Street, and he came out and he was at the red light at Citgo, and the other people in front of Leslie's retreat were at the red light, and the fire truck came, and he had nowhere to go. And the pilings next to the Citgo, and he was very elderly. He said, Bob, I literally almost had a heart attack. They're laying on the horn for him to move. He had nowhere to go. And that's what I see. And when you get up North Street at the St. Mary's Cemetery, all that parking is gone now. And that's where a lot of the houses have like one small driveway. And like you were saying, there's snow emergency. There's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go to Mac Park, but what if you live up by, up by the cemetery?
Sorry. Next question is from Marlene. Ward 6 has a good amount of park, playground, and green space. What would you do as a ward councilor to prioritize the protection, maintenance, and needed improvements of these areas in the ward? And what is your favorite Ward 6 park?
Gosh, well, I spent a significant amount of time, I was there this afternoon, softball tryouts for Collins Middle School up at Mac Park, so I guess I would pick Mac Park. I have to say that I love Ward 6 for so many reasons, but one of them is the amount of green space, and I think we can't underestimate, I think I saw Christine here, we can't underestimate the green space of our cemeteries. And I think, working with the city to make sure that we, maintain them, I think, I would need to do a better assessment as to what that looks like, but also get a better assessment of what can we use these green spaces for? How can we better utilize them so that they're a space we can enjoy, but we can also prioritize in terms of solving some of our other issues. So whether that's mini pocket parks, and mini pocket farms, whether we're talking about doing some energy efficiency or generation there, even rain barrels, things like that. I think there's a lot of ways for us to think about it. I also think, listen, the kids love going to those parks, and I love to get the kids involved, make sure that it's a whole community effort. One of the things that's been really interesting to me is see the dramatic diversity we have across Ward 6, which frankly I was a little surprised by, and I'd like to see these as community places where folks can join. There's no reason why we should just be meeting our neighbors as we're walking around door knocking. Let's bring folks together in these green spaces. Thank you. Is it Bob now?
Okay. I'm kind of partial to Mac Park because I live across the street. But I've been canvassing the ward, and Cabot Farm has got a nice little park. And there was one gentleman with his young son, and I was walking down Cabot Farm to go canvass the area until I got to the houses that said they're protected by guns. And I turned around and I went back and talked to him for like 20 minutes, and he goes, "Please don't tell anybody about this park." He says, "Me and my son come down here, and it's just I can let him run. He's only 3 years old." I like the farm at Mac Park. Some of the old time folks in the neighborhood miss the tobogganing in the winter, And I talked to a gentleman who just took over the girls' softball league, and they do a lot to maintain the actual field and everything. And he was concerned because Salem High, they haven't maintained, or they've lost the fields for the women's softball team. So they're playing over at Mac. More and more teams are starting to play over at Mac Park. And I mean, he maintains it, he does the lines. So I think if we can work with the city to start to bring some of these parks. There's a lot of parks out there. They've let them go. So, but he was kind of concerned about that.
The next is Caitlin.
Thank you. I don't do well with favorites, but I would say probably Leslie's Retreat Park might be my favorite to spend time in. I bike through there a lot, right along the river. It is in Ward 6, for anyone that's looking at me like, what? I like sitting along the river, watching the ducks, but I also am very partial to Mac Park. I'm at the farm most Saturday mornings, helping volunteer there. But I think my favorite green space that's not a park in the ward is probably Green Lawn Cemetery. I know everyone in the neighborhood walks around there and takes advantage of that space, and I'm really grateful we have it. In terms of, maintenance and improvements, I think are, of course, important for us to keep these spaces open to the public. Other than the preservation work that's being done at Green Lawn, I'm not aware of anything in particular that I think is lacking that needs some more attention. But I will say the accessibility of the parks and the ability for people to walk safely to them is definitely a concern I have, and I think that's something that we could really improve on. I've spoken to a lot of folks that are concerned that their streets are being used as through streets for people that don't live in the neighborhood to cut through, and they're not necessarily paying attention to people that are walking their dogs or spending time with the neighbors. So I would really like to see the city try to address that and take that more seriously.
Thank you very much. Before we move on to question number 4, I just want to take a moment to thank our 2 timekeepers down here in the front who are helping our candidates keep time. They're holding up little signs, so thank you very much for your effort tonight. Question number 4 is going to start with Bob. Salem is already seeing the effects of the climate crisis, including flooding during storms and high tides. Focusing on what you would do, what are your top priorities to mitigate the climate crisis?
It's a hard subject because I've noticed the last 5 years, the high tides and the full moons, you drive down Derby Street and the water's coming up over it. I'm a little concerned how close we're building to there because I'm a member of the Knights of Columbus, and we've had water come up to the stairs. We've almost had a canoe there on a Friday night. And I'm seeing some more developments like Ferris's Junkyard that are very close there, and I just think we gotta be aware that it's the tides are getting higher. There's definitely something going on. So I think when these developers are starting to do that, they gotta take that into consideration. Even the city when they're giving permits down there.
Next, Caitlin.
Thank you. Ooh, it's tough. It's going to be expensive. It's going to be very expensive. So the bigger concern for me for Ward 6, of course, in the flooding is the North River, right? We've all experienced that. Folks are familiar with 2018, the rather significant flood that happened in that space. The city has started to do some work on this from a policy perspective. There's actually been a lot that the city's done. From a policy perspective, we're a climate leader community, which means that we have adopted special code, we've adopted more green building ordinances so that new development needs to meet certain sustainability limit or sustainability credits. And we've also adopted a coastal resiliency overlay district, which means that any buildings that are put up in the flood zone have to be above a certain limit. So they're looking at the 100-year tide, and even some of the new buildings that are being put in, the first floor where the parking is going is above that flood limit. So there are things like that we've been considering, but finding a way to continue to prioritize building this infrastructure that we desperately need to keep our homes safe is going to be a struggle. I would like to see more collaboration with the Salem Sound Coast Watch try to see if we can build more living shorelines. That's something that we've done a little bit of so far out at Collins Cove. It seems like it's been successful. And the areas that we've looked at building seawalls is expensive. So we're gonna have to make sure that we're able to continue to store more rainwater during storms, which is another thing that's involved in the coastal overlay district, and try to fight fires when they show up.
So I guess one of the things I want to say is that it is multi-layered, and I do think we're very much a green city. We have done a lot of efforts, and we have done them independently, but we also need to work with our neighboring towns, and most importantly with the state. We are in the midst of an administration that is not supportive of anything as it relates to clean energy and green initiatives. So I think we are on our own for a little while, and or at least Massachusetts is on its own for a little while. And so I think we need to do what we do well in Salem, which is come together. Come together to think strategically and creatively about how we can make small changes that will have big impacts. So, I mean, I agree with everything that Caitlin just talked about in terms of some of the larger initiatives, but the smaller initiatives are thinking about having contests. Silly as that might sound, having contests between homes and figuring out how we can decrease water usage. Thinking about energy efficiency. I don't know about all of you, but I find it quite ironic when my national grid bill tells me how energy efficient I am on a piece of paper that gets mailed. That's not very energy efficient for that to be sent to my home. To think about how we can make youth aware of this and talk to our neighbors about how they become more helpful to the larger picture in Salem. So, I feel for the entire city of Salem and some of the water usage issues and water concern issues. So I would keep working on it. I don't know who's next. You.
Next is going to be Caitlin.
All right, we'll get the pattern eventually.
Yeah.
Salem passed an ordinance in April 2024 that prohibits camping on public property if shelter beds are available within 15 miles of the city, with recent amendments made this year. What are your views about this ordinance? And is there anything you would have added or changed regarding this ordinance?
Sure. So I've been fairly public about my opinion on this. I've spoken in front of City Council several times. I understand that there's some benefits to having this ordinance. There are some protections that it puts in place. There's some public safety things that it puts in place. I do have some issues with some of the details. Like in particular, that 15-mile limit is a bit of a concern to me. I don't think that taking someone out of their community and their support network and moving them 15 miles away when they can't afford to have a house or a car, I don't think that's really the intent of what the ordinance is trying to do. I don't think that's the intent of trying to make sure that we're helping people and we're helping people out of these situations. So that's a specific example that I would like to see changed. They recently amended it to shorten the time frame of when they would have to alert someone from when they would move someone from 72 hours down to 12 hours. I find it a bit troubling that folks expect people to pick up their whole life and all their belongings and move within 12 hours. So I would extend that back again, and ultimately try to build more housing and find a way to have more beds. That's the biggest problem that we have right now. A lot of these things in the ordinance aren't being enforced because there is no shelter, and there is no shelter within 15 miles.
Next is going to be Marlene.
I think what we really need to do is pay attention to the root causes of what's happening here, right? It's not about people having encampments. It's really about what is putting them in those encampments. Why do they feel like they are not able to access homes, are not able to access some type of shelter that is more appropriate for a human being? And so I think we need to, the people of Salem deserve more. And, regardless of who they are and how they present, they deserve more. We don't have, in my mind, a strategic enough plan as to how to handle the multifaceted issues that are being presented by individuals in the encampments. So I think we really need to work with some of the best and brightest minds across Salem to come up with a plan where it's not just about clearing people out and moving them down the street so that they're someone else's problem, but rather we address it here in Salem. And I don't think it has to be as costly as people make it out to be. I think one of the things we have to think about is we have a lot of buildings in Salem that sit empty on nights and weekends. We have a lot of social services in here in Salem that I think aren't necessarily working together. And I think we need to maximize the services we have in order to reach out and treat people like human beings. I think that's one of the first things to start with.
Next is Bob.
I worked 30 years with the State Department of Developmental Services and Mental Health. LifeBridge is overwhelmed, and they're not qualified to be taken care of. The ones that are on the street have mental illness, addiction. I would advocate for a regional shelter. Salem has bear the burden for the last 10 years. And we need every city to step up and have some type of shelter. There's plenty of, people like not in my area, but I ran group homes for the handicapped, and people didn't want us in their neighborhoods until we actually met with them and said, this is who we are. If you have any problems, here's my telephone number, call me. But LifeBridge has just grown overcapacitated, and when the people come out of there in the morning, they got nowhere to go. They need programs. They need day programs to go to. There's companies that are willing to hire people like that to assemble things, and I just think we have to work with the other communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Question number 6 is going to start with Marlene. Salem created a housing roadmap in 2022 that outlines various initiatives to help Salem in the housing crisis. Recently, the council passed or is actively deliberating items that were noted in the roadmap, such as the condo conversion ordinance and removing mandatory parking minimums. What initiatives would you support to help alleviate the housing affordability crisis here in Salem?
So once again, I think one of the things we need to do is call on our neighbors. It's been remarkable that as I've gone out and talked to folks, that most people just want to know how they can help their neighbors. They want to know how they can be part of the solution here in Salem. So while I do think we have done a lot of development and we're trying to provide a lot more housing, and I am fully in support of that, I also think we have to reinvent how we think about where someone can be living. And so the ADU effort, I think it was a start, and I think we, again, need to educate more folks. A lot of people don't understand what's going on. Like, we're having conversations about this, but most of the common folks out on the street don't know what we're talking about, and I think we need to do a lot more education to say, do you have space in your home that you can potentially house somebody else? Do you have space that you can convert into another a space that could be rented out? And further incentivizing it. We have done a lot of that in Salem. And again, I really have full appreciation for the current city councilors. I think the council president is here. And I just wanted to say, I think that we have so much more to do, but it's not going to be just putting up another building. I think there are spaces and times for that, but I also think we have to look inward in terms of what can Salem do to convert spaces, utilize buildings that, again, that sit empty. I'm part of the First Church in Salem. One of the things we did was bring the clothing connection in to the basement because we had an open space. I think we can think about those things when we think about food insecurity and housing insecurity.
Next is Bob.
So I owned rental units for 50 years in the city, and it was right near the old Park Brothers. We provided affordable units for 40 years to the people who lived in Park and worked in Park Brothers. And I keep hearing we need more affordable housing. We had them, and we drove the mom and pop landlords out of the city with unaffordable taxes, unaffordable water bills. And 5 years ago, I had to sell my property. So I keep hearing affordable housing, but I keep seeing 300 units of unaffordable housing coming every 6 months. So we had that, and we had plenty of it, and people used to pass their houses down to their kids. And I told my son, who was sitting out back here, these are all gonna be yours. He said, that's not what you've gone through for 40 years. I don't want these houses. So, I mean, we had that, we gotta try to bring that back with, you know, what people have, you know, available, so.
Thank you. Yeah, so I have, once again, the counselors that are in the room tonight know that I'm no stranger to public comment at the city council, and I've spoken before in favor of the condo conversion ordinance that was passed, eliminating real estate transfer fees, and most recently, a lot of minimum parking discussions. And these are great policies that the city can utilize to try to improve our housing crisis issues. The other thing that I would like to see the city really expand more on, though, is really trying to do some infill development. So infill development is taking parking lots that are either mostly empty or mostly holding cars for tourists in the downtown area and building housing on those areas. I think that there's an opportunity that we can leverage the infrastructure that's already in place there. We can expand on the population of people in the city that don't own cars. 15% of the city does not have access to a car. And if you're in the downtown area, we may not need to build parking. And building parking is one of the biggest reasons we have unaffordable housing. The reason that so many of those units are unaffordable is because they have $50,000 of parking space underneath the building, which adds $500+ a month to the rent. It's a lot. Some people need that. Some people will choose to continue to have that, but not everybody needs that. And I think there's an opportunity for us to really expand that and try to provide more affordable housing that way.
Thank you very much. Question number 7 is going to begin with Bob. As a member of council, you will be asked to vote on 2 matters related to the construction of the new Salem High School, a bond order and a debt exclusion ballot initiative. How would you vote on the matter, and how would you communicate your position to this public?
It's a touchy subject because of the cost. I know we've put a ton of money, probably the last 10 or 15 years, into the old high school. Well, the current one. I mean, they've taken every brick off the outside. They've replaced all the windows. So the building itself is there. And I've talked to a lot of people who have worked on it. That was built to hold 2,200 students. There's 900 in there right now. And I think one of the biggest things that might help is to bring back our vocational full programs. We're paying an abundant amount of money to Essex Tech, and they only take like maybe 20 kids a year from Salem. And I'm finding that, I know people who live in the other cities that are paying for that school too. And it's a great school, but we have the space to bring back our vocational. And that would bring other towns over to us that have lost theirs too. So I'm willing to sit down and see what the plans are and everything. And I just don't want to burden our next generation with a huge bill.
Next is Caitlin.
So sure, I would vote yes on both of them. I think it's important that the city continues to invest in its young people, continues to invest in education. That's something that the state has done really well. And I'm not sure if everyone knows this, but the state of Massachusetts actually has the highest GDP per capita of any state in the US. And it's the 5th highest in the world if it were its own country. And the reason for that is because we've invested in education. And that investment has found its way into higher tech technologies, biotech, other things that are mostly in the greater Boston area and a little bit farther south of us. But it's something that works. We can see that it's worked, and we need to keep doing this. So it is a lot of money, but if we do this now in this way, the state will pay for half of it, and we will only have to pay for the other half. It is still, last I saw, close to maybe $250 million. BA, you're gonna have to keep me honest after this and tell me it's changed, and I'm sure it's changed because it's been changing ever so slightly. But the debt exclusion is the way that we have to do this. It is a temporary tax increase. It's a temporary tax increase over the period of the loan, which is different from an override. A debt override is a permanent tax increase. So this is something that will be a bit of a burden on some folks in the city, but I think it's an investment that we need to make.
I would also vote yes on both, and I greatly appreciate the amount of time and energy that has gone into planning this out, thinking about this. There have been numerous conversations about plans and opportunities. I will say that Drs. Reich and the school committee, including Beth Ann Cornell, who's here tonight, have thought significantly about this and thought about how do we better utilize our current building, but our current building is a disaster. I'm just going to say it out loud. It is a disaster. It's embarrassing to have visitors come from the outside and they are freezing cold. I've run the Salem OTA cultural exchange program and had 50 Japanese visitors in there in November, and it's freezing. Going to a performance, you are uncomfortable in the seats and you can't see everything. It's a disaster, and kids can't learn in that type of an environment. We have to prioritize our kids. We have to invest in our future. It is, I think, a small price to pay. I agree with you, Caitlin. And I'd invite you, Bob, to go take a look at sorry, I'm not supposed to be addressing it, but go look at the CTE programs, because they're pretty phenomenal as they currently stand, and I think they only are growing, and Drs. Reich is doing a fantastic job really bolstering them, and feel similarly that we shouldn't be losing so many kids. Unfortunately, we lose a lot more kids than 20 every year.
Next question is going to begin with Caitlin. In response to the recent movements from the federal government, what strategies would you employ to resist federal overreach while protecting critical services and funding for residents? What can Salem do to help protect immigrant communities under attack from ICE and ensure genuine community safety?
Ooh, that's a good one. And unfortunately, the tactics that are being done by the administration seem to change by the day. And so I think one of the most important things is we have to just be able to move quickly. We have to be able to understand what's going on around us and be willing to move fast and treat things with urgency, because these are urgent times. It's hard to be more specific because there are so many things, but with the ICE thing in particular, I will reiterate to folks that Salem is a sanctuary city that was passed a few years ago. It is not the strongest sanctuary city ordinance in the state or in the country. And I know there have been some conversations potentially to strengthen that, to try to better protect our immigrant population, but my understanding is there are some folks that are concerned about that because it might put an even bigger target on our back. And we've seen that in some of our neighboring cities like Lynn. Everyone probably is seeing what's happening in Washington, D.C., and what has been happening in L.A. and potentially Chicago and South Station. So I think we need to be vigilant, we need to be prepared to act quickly, and definitely make sure that we're supporting each other. This is the time to look inward and build community. And if you don't know your neighbors, go out and meet your neighbors, because it's important.
And next will be Marlene.
So I similarly agree. I mean, I think that we need to make sure that we are protecting one another. And I think that I point to all the opportunities we have to connect as neighbors. So we are a city with a ton of churches. I think that's one of the places where we can think about really having conversations about educating people, helping people have spaces that feel safe, and having protections in terms of kind of neighborhood watches in terms of a ICE raid coming in. I'd also say that we need to better understand how and when they're coming, and I know that's not always fully possible, but we also are, the county seat, so we have a lot of folks coming in for criminal justice and civil matters into our courthouses here in Salem, understanding what happens there and how we can be vigilant in those areas. And we have a very active district attorney, working with the right infrastructure and the right people that we have here to better understand where are the protections, where are the lines, and how can we be vigilant along those. People in Salem, as I said earlier with other issues, are human beings. We want to keep them safe, and we want them to stay here in our community.
And next is Bob.
Salem has a history of immigrants, and I think the most important thing is the safety of all our residents. And, you know, we are a sanctuary city, but we got to find a balance. We got to find a way to work with people that are trying to do things. And I think my most important thing is if you see something that's not right, then say something. And I think it'll protect our immigrants and our residents. So that's the way I feel on that.
Thank you very much. Question number 9, so I'm going to begin with Marlene. How would you manage and advocate for infrastructure improvements requests from residents, such as sidewalk repairs, potholes, and tree maintenance? And for larger projects, Ward 6 and citywide, what is your plan to communicate with residents and ensure their feedback is actively collected and addressed?
Well, this is a pretty important one to me as I've been walking Ward 6 and tripping more than I care to talk about. I think that we have a lot of uneven sidewalks. And I've been talking to a lot of folks that would consider themselves older adults who feel nervous about walking down their street. I was really pleased actually as I was on social media today to see that the mayor, Pangallo, reported $750,000 for 79 new sidewalk projects. Kudos to Mayor Pangallo and the city for moving that forward. There is a lot going on there. So obviously, one, they're trying to get to the backlog, and that's fantastic. You know, I think just like we have with potholes, I think the opportunity for people to report those, be able to talk about those. Tree maintenance is another concern that people often have in terms of it's just not a top priority, but it tends to tree branches and limbs can fall down on people's homes and cars. So I think one of the things we want to do is just communicate that through electronic newsletters and Facebook, but I'd also say that a lot of people have no idea what's going on, and so door knocking, even as a counselor, it seems quite necessary. I also have been thinking about how we might use postcards, and then we don't have a very active neighborhood association currently, and I'd love to see that brought back and have a way for us to talk with folks further.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, that's a huge issue I'm running into. I'll ask somebody, do you have any issues? And they point in front of their house with the potholes. Trees are another. We have a lot of old trees that are lifting sidewalks up, and they haven't been addressed. There's a gentleman that lives, he's in a butter to the school here, and the trees that run along the fence have been overhanging his house for 20-something years. And to the point where in a good storm, there's shearing right through, branches are going through his vinyl siding. So he's called, you know, and he's actually had people come down. And I think if you're elected and your phone number is with the city and someone has a problem, they can call you. And my thing is, if you call me, I'm gonna come over to your house and we're gonna check it out and you're gonna make me a nice cup of hot tea and I'm gonna bring Bismarck's from Coffee Time. So I think a lot can get done that way.
That was an unfair shot, Bob.
Next is Caitlin.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm grateful that the mayor and the city are funding all of those sidewalk improvements. I've heard that the plan is to get through the entire backlog in the next 5 years. We'll see if that happens, but it's good that we have a goal that we're shooting for. So with the small things like that, like the potholes, like trees, like sidewalk issues, we do have the See-Click Fix program, app, whatever it's called. And I'm grateful that we have that. This is the sort of thing that I do in my day job. I work with a small team, and when they have issues, I ask them to, let's go through the proper channels, let's submit tickets, let's put stuff in, let's document this. And when we don't hear back from them, I'm gonna call someone. I'm going to figure out who the department head is. I'm going to give them a ring and ask, why is this resident who put this thing in 2-3 weeks ago, why haven't they heard back yet? This is a safety issue. Let's talk about the impact of what is happening here. Let's talk about reprioritizing this and getting this fixed. On the bigger things, I really, really, really want to see residents have more of a seat at the table earlier in design processes for different things that happen throughout the city. I think we've learned that with the North Street bike lanes. I think that there are some really obvious design things that could have been addressed if we had just talked to more people about it. More perspectives in the room and having more people involved in that process, I think, is really a benefit. And I think that residents would really appreciate it as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much. We're now in the final question. This one starts with Bob. What are your thoughts on how to better connect Ward 6 to the downtown area for pedestrians and cyclists?
I've been thinking about the whole traffic issues, especially people who work in the downtown. We have, up on Highland Ave, where Walmart is, they have a seasonal business, so they have a huge parking lot. And I go to other cities like Newburyport, they have their own transportation that drives through downtown from 9 to 5. Why can't we have people that are working downtown park up at Walmart, and starting at 7 in the morning, they bring them to work, and they constantly drive through downtown and utilize that parking lot? We need some type of transportation that would take their cars out of the city, and it would allow more people that are coming into the city to find parking spaces. I know a lot of people who own businesses, and they're down 30% this year, you know, because even people that live on the outskirts of you know, there's not enough parking. And so I think some type of our own transportation would work.
Thanks, Caitlin.
Boom. So I actually really like the transportation idea. I'm a big transportation advocate. There are two big opportunities that I see for the city, and both of them have a giant roadblock in front of them, which is the Massachusetts government and the state. The first thing is the North Street overpass is the bane of my existence, and folks have heard me talk about this before. Are gonna say, oh great, here she goes again, but I've only got 90 seconds, so I've gotta be quick. If folks have been over it recently, you've seen the barriers that they have actually in between the bike lane and the lane of travel. Fun fact, those are not there to protect the bike lanes. Those are there because the structure is failing, and they are concerned that large vehicles, if they get too close to the edge, will go over. Now, I have been told that states, don't worry, is putting a bunch of money into keeping this up and putting Band-Aids on it. I would really rather see this money be better utilized in doing something else with that overpass. The reason it exists in the 50s was because there was a big freight line there. That freight line was actually stopping emergency vehicle traffic between the downtown and in our neighborhood, and they actually had to go through Beverly. For a couple of years now, that freight line has been abandoned. It's not being used anymore. There's no reason to have that overpass there. It is costing the state a bunch of money. I would really like to see it changed. Thank you.
In terms of being able to help alleviate traffic and get people moving in new and efficient ways, I think that first off, we should utilize what we have. So we have prioritized bike lanes. What we haven't done is give people access to bikes, tell them how to use them, tell them where to park their bikes and lock their bikes when they get downtown. Those are one of the first things people have said to me is like, I would love to know how to access the bike, but I can't get there. We do have 3 blue bikes typically right near Green Lawn, but I think we need to do a better job of getting people connected. The other thing that we've done is we have the skipper, but it's not very reliable. It's not something that you can quickly decide to use. It's something you have to really plan your day around. One gentleman who I talked to when I was going around said, I go down to the beach with my friends, and so I plan about an hour to 2 hours in advance, and I schedule my skipper then. If you have that luxury, that's great, but that's not something we have. So I agree that we need some type of internal to Salem, or only 8 square miles system, preferably electric vehicles that will take our citizens, but also the tourists around town for free. I think that would alleviate quite a lot. So thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your responses to the questions this evening. Next, we will move into closing statements. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for a closing statement, and we will be going in ballot order. So we will begin with this one with Marlene.
Oh, great. By the way, I didn't know I was at the top of the ballot until you said that tonight, so I'm really happy about that. I just want to say again, thank you. Thank you, Dustin, for keeping us going and covering many topics. Again, thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to all of you for showing up this evening. Listen, this is going to be an election that is going to affect you on a very personal level, and so I hope one of us resonates with you. The good news is you don't really have a bad choice. I think we have opportunities to get engaged and involved. You have varying levels of experiences. What I would say for me is that I am committed. I am an organizer. I'm a connector. I am someone who cares passionately about Salem, from young people all the way through folks older. And I am somebody who has been here for 23 years and really understands the engagement that is necessary to get things done, to seek out expertise and apply it to problems. I think that one of the things that you should really think about as you move forward with this voting process on September 16th is, who do you feel comfortable picking up the phone or texting and hoping that they get back to you and you have a good conversation. I hope that candidate is me, and again, I appreciate your time.
Next is Bob.
I think, and I tell my kids this all the time, communication is the biggest thing. If you're running for counselor or you're a current counselor and you have your own personal agenda, you shouldn't be doing this job. The counselor's job is to engage the residents with their problems and then work with them and advocate for them. So it's a whole citywide thing, but I would be responsible for Ward 6 first, and I would work with the other areas of the city. I'm retired, so if you call me, I'm gonna come, and I'm gonna help you. So I want to thank everybody for coming, and there isn't a bad choice up here, but you got to get out and vote. This is probably the most important election of my lifetime, and the 17% to 20% voters is not going to get it done anymore. You know, I hear you when I'm walking around, so it's up to you. We put ourselves out here, so it's up to you to decide.
Thought I turned it off, I didn't. Thank you all for coming out tonight. I really appreciate that you all are all interested in considering the three of us. I think that you got a couple great choices up here, 3 great choices up here. I would just like to invite everyone afterwards. Feel free to flag me down. I'm happy to keep talking about any of the topics we discussed. If anyone else has any specific questions, 90 seconds is not a lot of time to discuss some of these complicated issues. So I'm happy to continue those conversations and again, discuss anything else you would like. I imagine they're gonna kick us out of the room just because people need to get home, but I'd be happy to be standing outside and it's a nice night out for that. So thank you all again. Please do remember to vote in the primaries. That's the 16th. It's not next Tuesday. It's not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. So mark your calendars. Please try to make it out. And I hope you'll consider me and how we can build the city for the future together. Thank you.
Thank you for your closing statements. And I'll now turn it over to Christine Ross from the League of Women Voters Salem to close out the event. Thank you very much.
Thanks again for the candidates for running to serve Salem as Ward 6 City Councilor, and thank you for sharing your ideas with the voters this evening. Let's have another round of applause for them. And let's thank our moderator, Dustin Luca, and the timekeepers, Claudia Lyons and Megan Emmert, for making the forum run so smoothly. So thank you, everyone. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening to the candidates this evening to inform your voting choices on September 16. We'd like again to thank the Salem Public Schools and Bates School Administration for allowing use of this space for the forum, and Salem Access TV for taping the forum. Voter registration for the preliminary election closes this Friday, September 5th. So if you're not yet registered, or if you need to check your address, update your address, please go to the Secretary of the Commonwealth webpage, check your registration, be sure you're eligible and able to vote. There's a QR code for that on the League of Women Voters table in the back, or visit City Hall. The League of Women Voters Salem also has, on their website, has a voter toolbox at lwvsalem.org. The voter toolbox includes candidate profiles and their positions on several issues based on a survey sent by the League to all the candidates. Right now, the toolbox includes just the ward candidates with preliminary elections. That's wards 1, 2, 5, and 6. The remaining candidate information will be added right after the preliminary election. The League of Women Voters Salem will host 2 forums next week with partner organizations. A forum for wards 1 and 2, organized with downtown Salem neighbors, will be at the Waterfront Hotel, 7 p.m. Monday, September 8th. A forum for wards 1 and 5, organized with the Point Neighborhood and Latino Leadership Coalition, will be held at Saltonstall School Auditorium at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, September 10th. And we're also working with partner organizations on forums for at-large and school committee candidates after the preliminary election. Please remember to vote on September 16. Tell your friends to vote. And voting in Ward 6 is here at Bates School. The polls are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And please also vote in the general election on Tuesday, November 4th. So thank you very much. Thanks for coming, and thank our candidates one more time.